Clara Jennings dropped to her knees in the dirt of the corral, blood running from a gash above her left eye, and she did not get up. The black stallion screamed and reared above her, 2,000 pounds of fury blocking out the Montana sun. 12 men watched from the fence rails, not one of them breathing. And Silas Drummond's hand went to the rifle on his saddle, because he had already buried one person he failed to protect, and he swore to God he would not bury another. But Clara Jennings did not move. She knelt in the dust, bleeding, and she began to sing. If you want to hear what happened next, subscribe to our channel and stay with Clara's story until the very end. Drop a comment telling us what city you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel. 3 days earlier, Clara Jennings climbed down from the stagecoach in Miles City, Montana, with 11 cents in her pocket, a leather satchel held together with twine, and the kind of hunger that made a person see double. She had not eaten since yesterday morning. A stale biscuit split with an old woman on the stage who had looked at Clara's hollow cheeks and said nothing, just broke the biscuit in half and held it out. Clara had taken it. 3 years ago, she would have refused. 3 years ago, she still had pride. Now she just had 11 cents and a letter from a schoolmistress in Helena who needed an assistant and did not ask too many questions. The stage driver tossed her satchel down from the roof. It hit the dirt, and the clasp broke open, spilling her father's horsehair rope and a faded daguerreotype across the ground. Clara scrambled to pick up the photograph before the wind took it. Her father's face stared back at her. Thomas Jennings, the best horseman in Wyoming, folks used to say. Before Virgil called or stole his ranch, his livelihood, and his will to live. "You all right, miss?" the stage driver asked. "Fine," Clara said, shoving everything back into the satchel. "When does the next stage leave for Helena?" "Tomorrow morning, 6 sharp." One night. She just had to survive one night in this dusty nowhere town with 11 cents to her name. She could do that. She had survived worse. That was when she heard the screaming. Not human screaming. Horse screaming. The kind of sound that reached down into Clara's chest and grabbed something primal, something she had spent 3 years trying to bury. She turned toward the sound, and her feet started moving before her brain caught up. The corral was at the end of the main street, a large round pen built from thick timber posts. A crowd had gathered, maybe 30 people, pressed against the rails like spectators at a prize fight. Clara pushed through them, her satchel banging against her hip, until she reached the fence. And she stopped breathing. The stallion was coal black, not dark brown, not bay, black as a moonless night, except for a single white star between his eyes. He was enormous, at least 17 hands, with a neck like a warhammer and legs that could outrun anything on 4 hooves in the territory. He was also out of his mind with terror. A cowboy was flat on his back in the dirt, not moving. 2 others were dragging him toward the gate, while the stallion reared and struck the air with his front hooves, screaming that terrible scream. "That's the 3rd one this week," a woman beside Clara said, shaking her head. "That horse is going to kill somebody." "What happened to him?" Clara asked, her eyes locked on the stallion. "Happened to the cowboy? Horse threw him clean over the—" "No," Clara cut her off. "What happened to the horse?" The woman gave her a strange look. "Who cares what happened to the horse, honey? It's a devil. Mr. Drummond paid a fortune to have him shipped from Kentucky, and the animal's been trying to murder folks since the day he arrived." "Somebody hurt him," Clara said quietly. She was not asking. She could see it in every line of the stallion's body. The way he pressed himself against the far side of the corral. The way his eyes rolled white when anyone raised a hand. The way he flinched at sudden movement. This was not a mean horse. This was a horse that had learned to expect pain from human hands. Clara's father had taught her to read horses the way other people read books. Every flick of an ear, every shift of weight, every tension in a muscle told a story. And this stallion's story was written in fear. "Somebody ought to shoot that animal before it kills someone," a man shouted from the crowd. Clara's hands tightened on the fence rail until her knuckles went white. "Step back! Everybody step back!" The crowd parted for a man who walked like he owned the ground beneath his boots. He was tall, broad-shouldered, maybe 28, with black hair and blue eyes the color of gunmetal. His jaw was set hard, and there was a tension in him that Clara recognized because she carried it herself. The tension of someone holding too many things together by force of will alone. "Marcus, you alive?" the man called out. The cowboy who had been thrown was sitting up now, cradling his arm against his chest. His face was gray with pain. "Arm's broke, boss. I felt it snap." "Damn it." The man, Drummond, Clara guessed, gripped the top rail of the fence. His knuckles were as white as Clara's. "Get him to Doc Whitfield." "Mr. Drummond," an older cowboy with a weathered face and silver-streaked mustache stepped forward. This was Tomas, the ranch foreman, and his voice was careful. "That's 3 men down. We got to talk about putting this animal down." "No." "Sir." "I said no, Tomas." Drummond's voice dropped low, and something raw flashed across his face. "I'm not killing him. He's not vicious. Something happened to him." "With respect, boss, it don't matter what happened to him. He's dangerous. He broke Marcus's arm. He cracked 2 of Pete's ribs Tuesday. Kicked young Danny so hard, the boy's still pissing blood. How many men you gonna let him hurt?" Drummond was quiet for a long moment. Clara watched his jaw work, watched the war playing out behind those steel blue eyes. This was a man who was used to solving problems, and he was staring at one he could not fix. "One more day," Drummond said finally. "Give me one more day." Tomas pulled his hat off and rubbed the back of his neck. "One more day, then what? Ain't a man in the territory who can ride that horse. I sent word to Bill Tucker over in Bozeman, best breaker in Montana. He said he wouldn't touch this animal with a 10-foot pole." "He's not vicious." Every head turned. Clara felt the blood rush to her face when she realized the words had come out of her mouth. 30 pairs of eyes fixed on her. A stranger. A woman. A half-starved nobody with a broken satchel and 11 cents. Drummond stared at her. "What did you say?" Clara's heart was hammering so hard she could feel it in her teeth. The smart thing was to shut her mouth, turn around, and walk back to the stage depot. She had a ticket to Helena. She had a job waiting. She had a plan. But the stallion screamed again, and the sound went through Clara like a knife. "I said he's not vicious," she repeated. And she was amazed that her voice came out steady. "He's terrified. Look at him. He's not attacking, he's defending. Somebody hurt that horse, and now every human hand looks like a fist to him." Silence. Then a man in the crowd laughed. "Well now, that's something. A woman horse expert." A few others chuckled. Clara felt the heat rise up her neck, but she did not drop her eyes from Drummond's face. Drummond did not laugh. He studied her the way a man studies a card he was not expecting to be dealt. Slow. Careful. "Who are you?" he asked. "Clara Jennings. I'm passing through." "You know horses?" "My father was Thomas Jennings. He bred cavalry mounts for Fort Laramie and Fort Garland for 15 years. I worked beside him from the time I was 6 until I was 21. I've gentled horses that would make your stallion look like a church pony." Another laugh from the crowd, but this one had a different edge. Nervous. Uncertain. Thomas Jennings. Tomas repeated the name, and his weathered face changed. I knew that name. He was the one who broke that line of Mustangs for the cavalry up at Fort Laramie 74, Clara finished. 16 unbroken Mustangs in 3 weeks. My father did 12. I did 4. You were a child, Tomas said. I was 14, and those 4 horses served with distinction for 8 years. Drummond had not taken his eyes off her. Clara held his gaze and tried not to think about how hungry she was, how tired, how close she was to the edge of everything. "Can you break him?" Drummond asked. The crowd went dead silent. "Mr. Drummond," someone said carefully, "you can't be serious. I'm asking her a question. Can you break him?" Clara looked past Drummond at the stallion. He had stopped running. He was standing in the far corner of the corral, his chest heaving, his black coat dark with sweat. And he was looking at her. Not at the crowd, not at Drummond, at her. Something passed between them. Clara could not have explained it if she had 100 years to try, but she felt it like a hand on her heart. Recognition. One broken creature to another. "Give me 3 days," Clara said. 3 days, Drummond repeated. 3 days. And your word that no one else goes near him. No one in the corral but me. And if you get hurt, then that's my concern, not yours. Drummond walked toward her. The crowd parted to let him through, and Clara held her ground even though everything in her wanted to step back. He stopped close enough that she had to tilt her chin up to meet his eyes. Up close, she could see the lines of exhaustion around his mouth, the shadows under his eyes. This man had not been sleeping. "What's your price?" he asked. "Room and board for 3 days. If I break him, enough money to get me to Helena with a month's living expenses." "And if you fail?" "Then I leave with nothing but the meals I've eaten and the roof over my head. But I won't fail." Drummond held out his hand. Clara looked at it. Rough, calloused, a working man's hand. She shook it. His grip was firm but not crushing, and his palm was warm. And Clara let go quickly because something about the contact unsettled her in ways she was not prepared to examine. "Tomas," Drummond said, turning to his foreman, "have someone take Miss Jennings to the ranch. Guest room in the main house." "Boss?" "That's an order." Tomas put his hat back on and sighed the sigh of a man who had stopped being surprised by anything. "Yes, sir. Miss Jennings, this way." Clara followed the old foreman toward a wagon, feeling the weight of every stare on her back. She heard the whispers. "Crazy woman. Gonna get herself killed. Who does she think she is?" She had heard those whispers before. Different town, different faces, same words. She was used to them. What she was not used to was the way Silas Drummond watched her walk away. She could feel his eyes on her like heat from a fire, and she did not look back because she was afraid of what she might see in his face, and more afraid of what he might see in hers. The Drummond Ranch sat 7 miles outside of Miles City, spread across a valley that backed up against low, rolling hills. Even in her exhaustion, Clara noticed the place was well run. Fences mended, outbuildings in good repair, cattle fat and healthy in the distant pastures. Tomas drove the wagon in silence for the first mile. Then he cleared his throat. "Your father," he said. A bed with a patchwork quilt, a washstand, a window that looked out toward the corral where the stallion would be kept. Clara set her satchel on the bed and pulled out her father's daguerreotype. "I'm going to do this, Daddy," she whispered. "One more time." She put the photograph on the washstand and went to find food. In the kitchen, a heavy-set woman named Bess was already setting out plates for the evening meal. She looked Clara up and down with the critical eye of someone who fed people for a living. "Lord, child, when's the last time you ate a proper meal?" "I'm fine, ma'am." That wasn't what I asked. Bess pushed a plate of bread and cold beef across the table. Sit down and eat before you fall down. Clara sat. She ate. The food hit her empty stomach like a revelation, and she had to force herself to slow down so she would not be sick. So you're the one who's going to break Mr. Drummond's devil horse, Bess said, watching her eat. Yes, ma'am. Folks in town think you're crazy. Folks in town don't know me. Bess smiled at that. No, I reckon they don't. But I'll tell you something about Silas Drummond, since you're sleeping under his roof. That man has been through hell and come out the other side with his decency intact. Lost his wife and baby 3 years back. Nearly broke him. He poured everything into this ranch because it was the only thing that kept him putting one foot in front of the other. Clara stopped chewing. He lost his wife? Childbirth. The baby didn't make it either. A boy. Bess's face softened. He don't talk about it. But that horse he bought from Kentucky? First thing he's been excited about since Margaret passed. And now the horse is trying to kill everyone who comes near it. And Silas is watching another thing he loves slip through his fingers. Clara set down her fork. She understood that feeling. She understood it in her bones. I'll break the horse, Clara said quietly. I believe you might, child. Bess studied her face. You've got something in those eyes of yours. Something stubborn and something sad. And Lord knows that's a powerful combination. Clara finished her meal in silence, then went out to the corral. It was twilight. The sky had turned the color of a fading bruise, purple and blue and black at the edges. The stallion was standing in the center of the pen, his head low, his body still. Clara did not go to the fence. She sat down in the grass about 20 feet from the corral and just watched. The stallion knew she was there. His ears swiveled toward her. But he did not run. He did not scream. I know, Clara said softly. Her voice barely carried past her own lips. I know what it's like when someone you trusted hurts you so bad you can't tell the good hands from the bad ones anymore. I know what it's like to flinch at every touch because you've forgotten what kindness feels like. The stallion's ears pricked forward. My name's Clara, and I'm going to sit right here until you decide I'm not worth being afraid of. She sat there until full dark, until the stars came out thick and white across the Montana sky. The stallion did not approach her, but he did not run either. He stood and watched, and Clara watched back, and something wordless passed between them in the darkness. When she finally stood to go inside, her legs stiff and her body aching, she turned and found Silas Drummond standing on the porch of the main house. She could not see his face in the shadows, but she could feel him watching her. He didn't run from you, Drummond said. His voice carried across the yard, low and rough. No, Clara said. He didn't. A pause. The cricket sang. Somewhere in the barn, a horse stamped. Nobody's been able to get that close to the corral without him going crazy, Drummond said. Not even me. He's not afraid of me. Why not? Clara climbed the porch steps. She stopped when she reached the top, close enough to see the hard line of Drummond's jaw, the way his hands gripped the porch rail like he was holding on to something. Because I know what it's like to be him, Clara said. And he can feel that. Drummond's expression did not change, but something shifted in those blue eyes. Something cracked open, just a fraction, like a door that had been locked for a long time. Supper's ready, he said. Bess saved you a plate. I already ate. Then eat again. You look like you haven't had a decent meal in a month. That's because I haven't. The words came out before she could stop them, and Clara felt her face burn. She had not meant to say that. She had not meant to show him any of the ragged edges of her life. But Drummond just nodded. No pity in his face, no judgment, just understanding. "Then eat again," he said quietly. "You've got a long 3 days ahead of you, and I need you strong." Clara went inside. She ate a second plate of Bess's beef and potatoes, and she tried not to think about Silas Drummond, standing alone on his porch in the dark, watching a horse he could not reach, and thinking about all the things he had lost. She tried not to think about the way his voice sounded when he said he needed her strong. She tried not to think about any of it. She failed. That night, lying in the clean, narrow bed with moonlight falling through the window, Clara pressed her father's daguerreotype against her chest and stared at the ceiling. 11 cents, a broken satchel, 3 days, and a horse that the whole territory had given up on, owned by a man who refused to give up on anything. Clara closed her eyes. 3 days, Daddy, she whispered into the darkness. That's all I need. Outside, the black stallion stood alone in his corral, his head turned toward the house, where the woman with the sad eyes and the steady voice had disappeared. For the first time since the long, terrible journey from Kentucky, since the dark of the boxcar and the hands that had beat him, and the voice that had cursed him, the stallion did not pace. He stood still, and he waited. Clara was up before the sun. Her body ached from the stage ride and the thin mattress, but the ache meant nothing because today she had a purpose for the first time in 3 years, and purpose was better than rest. She dressed quickly and came downstairs to find the kitchen empty. No Bess, no Drummond. Just a pot of coffee on the stove, still warm. Clara poured herself a cup and drank it standing. Her hands were shaking. She told herself it was the empty stomach and the strong coffee, but that was a lie. She was scared. The last horse she had worked with was a gentle mare at a livery stable in Denver, and that was 2 years ago. Before that, her father's ranch. Before that, a girl who knew exactly who she was and what she was worth. That girl felt like a stranger now. Clara set the cup down and walked outside. The stallion was awake. She could see him pacing the far side of the corral, his black coat catching the first gray light of morning. When she stepped off the porch, he stopped and turned his head toward her. "Morning, handsome," Clara said softly. "You ready to trust me?" "He ain't ready to trust nobody." Clara turned. Tomas was leaning against the barn door, a cigarette between his fingers. His face was unreadable in the half-light. "You're up early," Clara said. "Didn't sleep." Tomas took a drag and blew the smoke sideways. "Kept thinking about what you said yesterday, about your daddy, about Virgil Calder." Clara's stomach tightened at the name. "What about him?" "Calder worked for your father 6 years, you said." "That's right." "He ever work with the horses? The training, the breaking?" "Some. My father taught him the basics, but Virgil never had the patience for it. He was rough with the animals. Daddy warned him about it more than once." Tomas dropped his cigarette and ground it under his boot. "Mr. Drummond bought that stallion from a broker in Kentucky. Horse was shipped by rail. Took 3 weeks to get here. That's a long trip for a horse. Too long. And the broker hired a man to ride along in the boxcar with him. Keep the horse fed and watered. Keep him calm." Something cold crawled up Clara's spine. "What man?" Tomas met her eyes. Broker didn't give a name, just said he was experienced with horses. But when that stallion came off the train in Miles City, he had marks on him, Clara. Welts on his flanks. A cut behind his left ear. And he was a different animal than the one the broker described. Clara's hands closed into fists. Someone beat him. Someone beat him bad. In a boxcar where the horse couldn't run, couldn't escape. 3 weeks of it. The anger that surged through Clara was so sudden and so violent that it stole her breath. She knew what that kind of cruelty did to a horse. She had seen it once on her father's ranch, when a hired hand had taken a whip to a yearling while her father was away. The yearling had never fully recovered. Her father had fired the man on the spot and nearly broken his jaw doing it. "Does Drummond know?" Clara asked. "He knows about the marks. He doesn't know who did it." The broker claimed ignorance, said the horse must have hurt himself in the boxcar. And Drummond believed that? No, ma'am. That's why he won't give up on the animal. He knows somebody broke that horse's trust, and it's eating him alive that he can't fix it. Clara looked back at the stallion. He had stopped pacing and was watching them, his ears flicking back and forth. "I'm going in," Clara said. "Now?" "Right now, before the ranch wakes up, before there's noise and people and anything that might spook him. Right now, it's just me and him and the quiet. And that's what he needs." Tomas straightened up from the barn door. "I'll be right here." "Stay back from the fence. Don't make a sound." "Miss Jennings, not a sound, Tomas." The old foreman nodded once and stepped back into the shadow of the barn. Clara walked to the corral gate. Her heart was hammering. Her palms were slick with sweat. She wiped them on her skirt and lifted the latch. The stallion's head came up. His nostrils flared. Every muscle in his body coiled. Clara slipped through the gate and closed it behind her. 30 feet of open ground between them. The stallion on one side, trembling with fear. Clara on the other, trembling with something she refused to call fear, because if she named it, it would own her. She did not walk toward him. She sat down in the dirt. The stallion snorted. He pawed the ground once, twice. Clara could feel the vibration through the earth beneath her. She began to talk. "My daddy used to say, the worst thing you can do to a horse is make him feel trapped," Clara said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He said a horse will forgive you almost anything except taking away his choice. You take away his choice, you take away his dignity. And once that's gone, trust don't come back easy." The stallion's ears swiveled forward. "Somebody took your choice away, didn't they? Locked you in a dark box and hurt you when you couldn't run. And now every human looks like a cage to you." She sat there for nearly an hour, just talking. About her father, about the ranch in Wyoming, about the first horse she ever gentled, a speckled gray filly named Birdie, who used to follow her around like a dog. She talked about things she had not spoken of in years, and the words came out rough and raw, like pulling splinters from deep under the skin. The stallion stopped pacing after 20 minutes. He stood with his head low, his ears aimed at Clara like 2 dark funnels catching every syllable. After 40 minutes, he took a step toward her. Clara did not react. She kept her eyes on the ground, her hands open in her lap, and she kept talking. Another step. Another. The stallion stopped 10 feet from her. Clara could hear his breathing, deep and shuddering. She could smell him, sweat and dust and the sharp musk of fear. "That's it," Clara breathed. "That's brave. Nobody's going to hurt you here." The stallion stretched his neck toward her. His nostrils were wide, pulling in her scent. Clara stayed perfectly still, and her father's voice echoed in her memory. "Let the horse come to you, Clara girl. Always let the horse come to you." His nose touched her shoulder. Clara's eyes filled with tears, and she blinked them back hard because crying meant movement, and movement meant breaking the spell. The stallion's breath was hot against her neck. He snuffled at her hair, her collar, the sleeve of her shirt, investigating, deciding. Then he pulled back and just stood there, 10 feet away, watching her. Not running, Not screaming, just watching. Clara let out a breath she felt like she'd been holding for 3 years. When she finally stood, slowly, so slowly, the stallion did not bolt. He shifted his weight, tossed his head once, but held his ground. Clara turned her back on him and walked to the gate. Behind her, she heard him follow a few steps, then stop. She slipped through the gate and closed it, and only then did she let her hands shake. Tomas was standing exactly where she had left him. His weathered face was slack with something that looked like shock. "Madre de Dios," he said softly. "Don't tell anyone what you saw," Clara said. "Not yet. I don't want people crowding that fence and undoing everything I just built. Miss Jennings, that horse walked right up to you." "He walked up to me because nobody was watching, because it was quiet and he had a choice, and he chose to be brave." Clara rubbed her hands on her skirt to stop the trembling. "Tomorrow I'll introduce the rope. Day after, the saddle. But only if he stays calm, and he'll only stay calm if people leave us alone." "I'll keep the men away," Tomas said, and there was something new in his voice. Something that sounded like respect. "You have my word." Clara nodded and walked toward the house. She made it to the kitchen before her legs gave out, and she grabbed the edge of the table to keep from hitting the floor. "Lord have mercy!" Bess was at her side in an instant, pushing her into a chair. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine, just hungry." Bess put a plate of eggs and bacon in front of her without another word, and Clara ate with the focused intensity of someone refueling for a fight. She was halfway through her second helping when Drummond walked in. He stopped in the doorway. His hair was damp and his shirt was fresh, and he looked at Clara like he was trying to solve an equation that kept giving him the wrong answer. "Tomas told me," he said. Clara shot a look toward the window. So much for keeping it quiet. "He told me you were in the corral at dawn, and the stallion walked up to you within an hour." "Tomas talks too much." "Tomas has worked with horses for 30 years, and he says he's never seen anything like what you did this morning." Drummond pulled out a chair and sat down across from her. Close. Too close for a kitchen table. "How?" "I sat down and I talked to him." "That's it?" "That's everything, Mr. Drummond. A horse can't trust someone who's trying to dominate him. I wasn't trying to dominate anything. I was just being present, giving him the choice to come to me or not." "Silas," he said. Clara blinked. "What?" "Call me Silas. You're in my kitchen, eating my eggs, and you just did the impossible with my horse. I think we're past formalities." Clara held his gaze for a beat too long. His eyes were very blue. She looked away first. "Silas, then." "And I'll call you Clara." "You've been calling me Clara since yesterday." "Have I?" The faintest ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Guess you just have that kind of name. The kind that sticks in your mouth." Bess made a sound from the stove that might have been a cough or might have been a laugh. Clara pushed her plate away and stood. "I'm going back out this afternoon. Same thing. Quiet. No audience." "I'd like to watch," Silas said. "No." "From the barn. You won't even know I'm there." "The horse will know. Horses always know." Silas leaned back in his chair. "You telling me my horse trusts you more than he trusts me?" "I'm telling you your horse doesn't trust anyone yet. He tolerated me this morning. Tolerance isn't trust." "Trust is what I'm building toward, and it's fragile. And one wrong move from anyone, you, your men, anyone, could shatter it." Silas was quiet. Clara could see him struggling with it. The need to be involved, to fix things, to control the situation. She recognized it because she carried the same need. "Fine," he said. "I'll stay away. But Clara..." "What?" "Be careful." "I'm always careful." "No, you're not. You sat down in the dirt with a 2,000-pound animal that broke 3 men's bones this week. That's not careful. That's brave. And brave and careful aren't the same thing. Clara did not have an answer for that, so she walked out without giving one. The afternoon session went better than the morning. Clara brought a length of soft rope into the corral, not to use, just to let the stallion see it, smell it, understand that it was not a weapon. She laid it on the ground between them and sat beside it. The stallion approached faster this time, 15 minutes instead of 40. He sniffed the rope, snorted, pulled back. Clara did not react. After a while, he came back and sniffed again. "Good boy," Clara murmured. "It's just rope. It can't hurt you." By the end of the session, she was standing beside the stallion, one hand on his neck, the other holding the rope loosely at her side. His muscles twitched under her palm, but he did not pull away. She left the corral with the rope untouched and her heart full of a fierce, aching hope that she had not felt since the day the bank took her father's land. That evening, she found Silas on the porch again. It was becoming a pattern, and Clara told herself she should break it, should eat her supper and go to her room, and stay away from a man whose blue eyes made her forget that she was leaving in 2 days. Instead, she sat down on the porch rail across from him. "Tell me about your wife," Clara said. Silas flinched. It was small, just a tightening around his eyes, but Clara caught it. "Bess told you. Bess worries about you. Bess talks too much. Her and Tomas both. They care about you. That's not the same as talking too much." Clara pulled her knees up, wrapping her arms around them. "You don't have to tell me. I just thought, since you know about my father, it seems fair." Silas stared out at the darkening sky for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was flat, controlled, like a man who had practiced saying these words in a way that wouldn't crack him open. "Margaret. Her name was Margaret. We were married 2 years. She died in childbirth. The baby, a boy, he lived about 4 hours." Clara's chest ached. "I'm sorry." "It was 3 years ago. Everybody says it gets easier. It doesn't get easier. You just get better at carrying it." "I know." Silas looked at her. "Yeah, I reckon you do." They sat in silence, not the awkward silence of strangers, but the knowing silence of two people who had visited the same dark country and come back with similar scars. "That's why you won't give up on the horse," Clara said quietly. Silas's jaw tightened. "Don't." "Don't what?" "Don't do that. Don't psychologize me. I bought a good horse and I want him broke. That's all." "That's not all, and you know it." Clara's voice was gentle but firm. "That horse is something you love that's slipping away from you, and you've already had too much slip away. You'd rather shoot yourself than let one more thing you care about be destroyed." Silas stood up so fast the chair scraped against the porch boards. He walked to the rail and gripped it with both hands, his knuckles white, his head bowed. Clara waited. She had pushed too far, she knew that. But she also knew that the truth was like her father's rope. It had to be laid out in the open before it could do any good. "Her name was Margaret," Silas said again, so quietly Clara had to strain to hear. "And she was afraid of horses. Can you imagine that? A rancher's wife who was afraid of horses. She came out here from St. Louis, and she never really took to the life. But she tried. God, she tried. And I loved her for trying." Clara did not move. "When she died, I wanted to burn this ranch to the ground. I wanted to sell every head of cattle, tear down this house, and walk away. Tomas talked me out of it. He said Margaret wouldn't want that. He was right. But some days I look around at all of this and I think, What's the point? Who am I building it for? You're building it for yourself, Clara said. Because building something is how you survive. I know, because I stopped building after my father died, and I've been slowly disappearing ever since. Silas turned to look at her. In the fading light, his face was stripped of every defense, every wall, every piece of armor he wore to get through the day. He looked young and lost, and so terribly alone. "You're not disappearing," he said roughly. "You walked into that corral this morning, and you were the most present person I've ever seen." Clara's throat tightened. She stood up from the rail. "I should go to bed." "Clara." "Good night, Silas." She walked inside and closed the door, and pressed her back against it, and breathed until her heart stopped hammering. 2 more days, then Helena, then a quiet life sewing dresses for a schoolmistress. A life where nobody looked at her the way Silas Drummond had just looked at her, like she was the first real thing he had seen in 3 years. She could not afford this. She could not afford him. She had 11 cents and a dead father's legacy, and a horse to break, and that was all the weight she could carry. Clara went to bed and dreamed of boxcars and dark hands and a horse screaming in the night. She woke before dawn to the sound of real screaming. Clara was out of bed and down the stairs in seconds, her bare feet slapping the cold floor. She burst through the front door and heard it again, the stallion shrieking in the corral, a sound of pure terror. She ran. The corral was dark. The stallion was running in blind circles, slamming into the fence rails hard enough to make the whole structure shudder. Something had spooked him. Something bad. "Easy!" Clara shouted, grabbing the top rail. "Easy, boy! It's me!" Tomas came running from the bunkhouse, lantern swinging. "What happened?" "Something scared him. Help me with the gate." "Clara, don't go in there in the dark. He'll trample you." "Open the gate, Tomas." The old foreman opened the gate, and Clara slipped through. The stallion was on the far side of the corral, blowing hard, his eyes rolling white. Clara could smell something sharp in the air. Smoke. Tobacco smoke. Someone had been here. Someone had been at the corral in the middle of the night. "Easy, beautiful," Clara said, moving slowly toward the stallion. "I'm here. You're safe." The horse was shaking. His whole body trembled like he was standing in a blizzard. Clara reached him and put her hands on his neck and felt his heart pounding so hard it vibrated through her palms. "Shh, I've got you. Nobody's going to hurt you." Silas appeared at the gate, shirt untucked, boots unlaced, a rifle in his hands. "What happened?" "Somebody was at this corral," Clara said, her voice shaking with fury. "Somebody was here and they scared him. I can smell the tobacco." Silas vaulted the fence in one motion, landing in the corral. The stallion flinched, but did not bolt. Clara's hand on his neck held him steady. Silas bent down and picked something up from the dirt. He held it up to the lantern light Tomas was holding over the fence. A burnt cigarette stub. Cheap tobacco. And beside it, in the dust, a boot print that did not belong to anyone on the ranch. Silas's face went hard as stone. "Somebody was here," he said. "Somebody came onto my land in the middle of the night and tormented my horse." "Who?" Tomas asked, but his voice was strange, tight, like a man who already knew the answer and wished he didn't. Silas looked at the boot print, then at the cigarette, then at Clara. His blue eyes burned in the lantern light. "Find out," he said to Tomas. "I want to know who's been on this ranch tonight. Check every hand, check every bunkhouse, and check the road into town." Clara stayed with the stallion until his trembling stopped. She stayed until his heart slowed under her hands, and his head dropped and he leaned into her like a child pressing against its mother. And she stood in the dark corral with her arms around a frightened horse's neck and thought about cheap tobacco smoke and boot prints in the dust. And she thought about Virgil Calder, and her blood turned to ice. Because she knew that smell. She had grown up with it. Virgil Calder smoked cheap tobacco. He always had, even when her father's money was paying for it. Clara pressed her face against the stallion's warm neck and whispered words that were not for the horse at all. Not again. I won't let it happen again. Clara did not sleep the rest of that night. She sat on the porch with her father's rope coiled in her lap, watching the corral, listening to every sound the darkness made. The stallion had settled, but Clara had not. Her mind kept circling back to the tobacco smell, the boot print, the way the horse had screamed like something out of a nightmare. Virgil Calder. She had no proof. She told herself that. Cheap tobacco was common. Half the drifters in Montana smoked the same rot-gut brand. It could have been anyone. A drunk cowboy from town. A curious kid. A coyote that spooked the horse while some stranger happened to be passing by. But Clara's gut knew better. Her gut had known Virgil Calder was poisoned 6 months before he stole her father's ranch, and she had said nothing because she was 21, and her father was a grown man, and who was she to question his judgment? She would not make that mistake again. When the sky began to lighten, Silas came out with 2 cups of coffee. He handed her one without a word and sat down beside her on the porch steps. His rifle was propped against the rail within arm's reach. "Tomas checked the bunkhouse," Silas said. "All hands accounted for. Nobody left the ranch last night." So it was someone from outside. "Boot print doesn't match any of my men. Tomas is riding the fence line at first light to check for gaps." Clara wrapped her hands around the tin cup. "Silas, I need to tell you something." He looked at her. Even exhausted, even with shadows carved under his eyes, those blue eyes missed nothing. "The tobacco," Clara said carefully. "I recognize the smell." Silas went still. "Recognized it how?" "Virgil Calder, the man who stole my father's ranch. He smoked that same cheap tobacco. Virginia Rough Cut. I'd know it anywhere." "Clara, that's a common brand." "I know it's a common brand. I know I could be wrong. But you asked me yesterday what happened to your horse during that train ride from Kentucky. You said the broker hired a man to ride along in the boxcar, a man who is experienced with horses." She watched the pieces come together behind Silas's eyes, watched his jaw tighten, watched his hands close around his coffee cup until the knuckles went white. "You think Calder was the handler," Silas said. "I think Calder has been drifting since he stole my father's ranch. I think he's the kind of man who takes jobs nobody else wants, because nobody will hire him for long. And I think if he was in that boxcar for 3 weeks with your stallion, he would have beaten that horse bloody, because that's who Virgil Calder is. He breaks things. It's what he does." Silas set his coffee down on the step. His hand was shaking, and Clara could tell it was not from cold. "And now he's here," Silas said, "in Miles City." "Maybe. Or maybe I'm seeing ghosts." "You don't strike me as the kind of woman who sees ghosts, Clara." She looked at him. His face was hard, but his eyes were searching hers, and she realized with a jolt that he believed her. He barely knew her, and he believed her. "What do you want to do?" Silas asked. "I want to break your horse today. I want to ride him. And if Virgil Calder is out there watching, I want him to see what patience can do that his fists never could." Silas held her gaze for a long beat. Then he nodded once. "Then let's get it done." Clara went to the corral at 7 o'clock. The ranch hands had been told to stay away, but she could feel them watching from the bunkhouse windows, from the barn door, from the edges of the yard. She let them watch. Today was not about quiet. Today was about proof. The stallion was skittish from the night's terror. He paced the corral when Clara entered, his head high, his nostrils wide. The trust she had built over 2 days felt paper-thin this morning, and Clara's chest ached with the knowledge of how easily cruelty could undo what kindness had built. "I know," Clara said, standing near the gate. "Last night was bad. Somebody came and scared you, and now you're wondering if I'm going to hurt you too." The stallion snorted and tossed his head. "I'm not. I'm never going to hurt you. But I need you to believe that, and believing is the hardest thing in the world when you've been hurt the way you have." She stood still. She did not sit down this time, because sitting was for introductions, and they were past introductions now. Today she stood and faced the stallion like an equal, and she held out her hand, palm down, and waited. 5 minutes. 10. The stallion paced. He circled. He came close, then veered away. Clara's arm ached from holding it out, but she did not drop it. 15 minutes. The stallion stopped on the far side of the corral, facing her. Clara could feel the war raging inside him, fear and trust pulling him in opposite directions. "You can do this," Clara whispered. "You're braver than whoever hurt you. You're braver than any of it." The stallion walked toward her, slow, 1 step at a time. His ears were forward, his eyes dark and liquid, and when he reached Clara's hand, he pressed his muzzle into her palm and blew out a long, shuddering breath. Clara's eyes burned, but she kept her voice steady. "Good boy. That's my brave, beautiful boy." She stroked his nose, his cheek, his neck. She ran her hand down his shoulder and felt the ridge of a scar under his coat. A whip mark, old but unmistakable. Clara's jaw clenched so hard her teeth ached. She took her time. The rope came first. She showed it to the stallion, let him smell it, let him mouth it. Then she looped it loosely around his neck, not pulling, not tightening, just letting it rest there so he could feel its weight. The stallion flinched. Clara waited. He settled. She clipped the lead to his halter and walked. The stallion followed. They circled the corral together, woman and horse, moving in rhythm, and Clara felt something unlock inside her chest that had been sealed shut since the day the bank came for her father's land. The saddle came next. Clara had Tomas leave it on the fence rail the night before. She carried it into the corral and set it on the ground between them. The stallion's reaction was immediate. He backed away, ears pinned, eyes rolling. Clara did not pursue. She simply stood beside the saddle and talked. "Somebody put a saddle on you in that boxcar, didn't they? Cinched it tight and climbed on and used a quirt when you fought back. I know. I can see it on you." She talked for 10 minutes before the stallion approached the saddle. He sniffed it, jerked back, sniffed again. Clara picked it up slowly, letting him see every movement. "This saddle is not a punishment," she said. "It's a partnership. When I put this on your back, it means we're working together. It means I trust you to carry me, and you trust me not to hurt you." She lifted the blanket first, laid it across his back. The stallion danced sideways, and Clara moved with him, her hand on his neck, the blanket settled and soft. Then the saddle. She swung it up gently, and the stallion's whole body went rigid, every muscle locked. Clara could feel the explosion building under her hands. "Breathe," she whispered. "Just breathe." The stallion trembled. His head came up, came down. His hooves stamped the packed earth. Clara held the saddle steady and pressed her forehead against his neck. "I've got you. I'm right here." Slowly, the tension bled out of him. His breathing steadied. Clara reached under his belly and cinched the girth, loose enough to be comfortable, tight enough to hold. The stallion stood saddled in the Montana morning, and he did not buck, did not rear, did not scream. He stood, and he breathed, and he trusted Clara with the weight on his back. "Now comes the hard part," Clara murmured. She put her foot in the stirrup. The stallion shifted. Clara paused, her weight half on the ground, half on the stirrup, giving him time to adjust. "Easy. This is just me. You know me." She swung up. For one terrible, eternal second, the stallion's body turned to stone beneath her. Clara could feel every muscle coil to explode, could feel 3 weeks of boxcar hell and whip marks and screaming surging up through the animal like lava through cracked earth. She did not grab the reins. She did not tighten her legs. She sat light and balanced and still, and she said the only thing that mattered. "I trust you." The stallion's head came down, his ears swiveled forward, and he took a step, then another, then another. Clara Jennings was riding the horse that had broken 3 men. Tears blurred her vision, but she blinked them away because she needed to see, needed to feel every shift of the stallion's weight beneath her. He was walking. Steady, cautious, but walking. Carrying her around the corral with a grace that took her breath away. She heard shouting from beyond the fence. The ranch hands. She did not look at them. She looked between the stallion's ears at the path ahead, and she whispered praise with every step. "That's it. That's my boy. You're perfect. You're so brave." 3 circuits of the corral. Then Clara drew him to a gentle halt and dismounted. The stallion turned his head and bumped her shoulder with his nose, and Clara threw her arms around his neck and sobbed into his mane. She was still crying when she heard boots hit the corral dirt behind her. Silas had vaulted the fence. He was walking toward her, and his face was something Clara had never seen on a man before. Not admiration, not gratitude. Something deeper. Something that looked like a man watching a door open that he thought had been nailed shut forever. "Clara," he said, and his voice cracked on her name. "Don't," she said, laughing through her tears. "Don't you dare make me cry harder." He stopped 2 feet from her. His hand came up like he was going to touch her face, then dropped to his side. "Name your price," he said. "Whatever you want. It's yours." The words from that first day. But his voice was nothing like that first day. His voice was raw and broken and full of something that made Clara's heart slam against her ribs. Before she could answer, a voice cut through the moment like a blade. "Well, ain't that a pretty picture?" Clara's blood went cold. She knew that voice. She had heard it 1,000 times across her father's dinner table, in the barn, on the porch where it told jokes, and lied through its teeth while it plotted to steal everything her family owned. She turned slowly. A man was leaning against the far side of the corral fence. Medium height, wiry build, a face like tanned leather with a scar running from his left ear to the corner of his mouth. His hat was pulled low. His clothes were road dirty, and a hand-rolled cigarette dangled from his lips. Virgil Calder. Clara felt the stallion react before she saw him move. The horse reared back, ripping the lead rope from her hand, and screamed. The same scream from that first day. The same blind animal terror. "Easy!" Clara grabbed for the rope. The stallion was spinning, slamming into the fence, trying to get away from the voice, from the smell, from the man who had beaten him in the dark of a boxcar for 3 weeks. "Get away from this fence!" Silas roared, moving toward Calder. "Get off my land!" Calder did not move. He took a long drag on his cigarette and smiled. It was the ugliest smile Clara had ever seen. "Wouldn't be too hasty, Mr. Drummond. I just came to see how my horse is doing." "Your horse?" Silas stopped dead. "Well, I suppose that's a matter for the lawyers to sort out." Calder reached into his coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "See, the thing is, that broker you bought your fancy stallion from? He didn't exactly own the horse. I did. Still do, according to this bill of sale. Broker sold you stolen property, friend." Clara felt the ground shift under her feet. Not physically. Something worse. Something familiar. The same trick. The same con. Forged papers. Stolen property. A lie dressed up in legal language. "That's a lie," Clara said, and her voice came out sharp enough to cut. Calder's eyes found her, and his smile widened. "Well, well, little Clara Jennings. I almost didn't recognize you. You've gotten thin, girl. Time's been hard?" "You know damn well how hard times have been, Virgil. You made sure of it." "Now that's not fair, Clara. Your daddy's ranch failed because your daddy couldn't manage his way out of a paper bag. I just picked up the pieces." Clara took a step toward him and felt Silas's hand close around her arm. Not restraining, anchoring. "Don't," Silas said quietly. "That's what he wants." Calder tapped the folded paper against the fence rail. "Tell you what, Drummond, I'm a reasonable man. I don't want trouble. You hand over the horse, and we'll call it square. No lawyers, no sheriff, no fuss." "The hell I will," Silas said. "Then I'll take it to the law. Judge Harriman, over in Miles City, happens to be a friend of mine. Known him for years. I reckon he'll see things my way." Clara's stomach dropped. Judge Harriman. If Calder had the judge in his pocket, it did not matter whether the bill of sale was real or forged. The ruling would go Calder's way. Just like it had gone his way in Wyoming, when he stole her father's ranch with papers that were not worth the ink they were printed on. "You need to leave," Silas said. His voice was level, but Clara could feel the fury vibrating through his hand on her arm. "Now, before I do something the law will make me answer for." Calder pushed off the fence and tipped his hat. "I'll give you 3 days to think it over. After that, I'll be seeing the judge." He looked at Clara one more time. "Nice work with the horse, girl. Your daddy would be proud. Shame he ain't around to see it." He turned and walked away, casual, unhurried, like a man who had already won. Clara watched him go, and the rage inside her was so vast and so old that it felt like a second heartbeat. "Clara!" Silas turned her to face him. His hands were on her shoulders, firm and warm. "Look at me. That paper is a fake. I bought that horse through a legitimate broker with a legitimate bill of sale. He can't just walk in here and claim, 'He did it to my father.'" Clara's voice was flat. Dead. "Same trick, different town. He forges a document, finds a friendly judge, and takes what he wants. My father fought it for 6 months and lost everything. The legal fees alone would have bankrupted us, even if we'd won. This isn't Wyoming, and I'm not your father." "My father was a good man, Silas." "I know he was, but your father didn't have the resources I have. I've got money, I've got a lawyer in Helena, and I've got every man on this ranch ready to swear that horse has been mine since the day he arrived." "And Calder's got Judge Harriman." Silas's hands tightened on her shoulders. "Then we go over Harriman's head. I'll send a telegram to my lawyer today. We'll get this in front of a territorial judge. A real one." Clara wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe that this time would be different. That this time, Virgil Calder would not walk away with everything. But she had believed her father when he said the same thing, and she had stood beside his grave 8 months later. "He was in the boxcar," Clara said. "Virgil Calder was the handler the broker hired. He beat your horse for 3 weeks in the dark, and now he's come back to steal him. That's what he does. He destroys things, and then he takes the pieces." "He's not taking anything from me." Silas's voice was iron. "Not the horse, not this ranch, and not you." Clara's breath caught. "Silas." "I mean it, Clara. Whatever this man is, whatever he's done, he doesn't get to win again. Not here. Not while I'm standing." She looked up at him, this man she had known for 3 days, and she saw something in his face that she had not seen since her father was alive. Certainty. The kind of absolute, unshakable certainty that came from a man who had already lost the worst thing he could lose and was not afraid of anything anymore. "Okay," Clara said. "Okay?" "Okay. We fight him. But we do it smart, Silas. Calder is patient. He'll lie and cheat and wait as long as it takes. We can't just outmuscle him. We have to outsmart him." "Then we outsmart him." Tomas appeared at the corral gate. His face was grim. "Boss, I found the gap in the north fence. Wire was cut clean. He came in from the ridge trail. And I found this." He held up a short-handled whip. Braided leather, stained dark. Clara looked at it, and her knees nearly buckled. She knew that whip. She had seen it hanging in her father's barn for 6 years. Virgil Calder's quirt. The one he used on horses when nobody was watching.
"That's his," Clara said. "That's the whip he used on the stallion."
Silas took the quirt from Tomas. He turned it over in his hands, his face set like granite. Then he looked at Clara. "You said he was in the boxcar. Now we can prove it."
"How?"
"Doc Whitfield. He examined the stallion when he arrived. Made notes about the welts and cuts. If the marks on this horse match the marks that whip would make,
"Then we can prove Calder abused the horse," Clara finished.
"And if we can prove he abused the horse, we can prove he was the handler. And if he was the handler, he never owned the horse. He was hired help. His bill of sale is worthless. Tomas, ride into town, get Doc Whitfield out here today, and send a telegram to Samuel Creighton, my lawyer in Helena. Tell him it's urgent." Tomas was already moving.
"Yes, sir."
Clara and Silas stood alone in the corral. The stallion had calmed during the confrontation, pressed against the far fence, trembling, but no longer screaming.
Clara went to him and put her hands on his neck.
"We're going to make this right," she told the horse. "I promise you, he's not going to hurt you again." Silas came up beside her. He put his hand on the stallion's neck next to Clara's, and for the first time since the horse arrived in Montana, the animal did not flinch from a man's touch. Silas looked at Clara. His eyes were bright, fierce, burning with something that was not just anger at Calder, and not just concern for the horse, and not just determination to fight. "3 days ago you were passing through," he said. 11 cents in your pocket. On your way to Helena to sew dresses." "Don't remind me." "I'm glad you stopped, Clara." She looked at his hand on the horse's neck, inches from hers. She looked at his face, hard and tender all at once, and she felt the ground beneath her feet shift again. But this time it was not falling away. This time it was settling. Like foundations being laid.
Like something being built instead of destroyed.
"So am I," Clara said. Their fingers touched on the stallion's neck. Neither of them pulled away. And somewhere on the road to Miles City, Virgil Calder was riding toward town with a forged bill of sale in his pocket and a friendly judge waiting to hear his case. And he was smiling, because he had never lost a con in his life. But Virgil Calder had never gone up against Clara Jennings and Silas Drummond together. And he had never gone up against a woman who had already lost everything once, and had sworn on her father's grave that she would never let it happen again. Doc Whitfield arrived at the ranch 2 hours after Tomas rode for town. He was a thin man with spectacles and steady hands, and he carried a leather bag that had seen more miles than most men in the territory. "Show me the horse," he said before he even climbed down from his buggy. Clara led him to the corral. The stallion was calm now, standing near the water trough, but his ears flattened when he saw a stranger approaching. "Stay back from the fence," Clara told the doctor. "Let me bring him to you." She slipped into the corral, and the stallion came to her immediately, pressing his nose against her shoulder. Clara stroked his neck and guided him toward the fence where Doc Whitfield was waiting. "I need to see the marks," the doctor said. "The ones I documented when he arrived." "He'll let you touch him if I'm here," Clara said. "Go slow." Doc Whitfield reached through the fence rails and ran his hands along the stallion's flanks. The horse flinched, but held steady under Clara's touch. The doctor pushed back the coat and examined the scarred skin underneath, his face tightening with each mark he found. "These are whip marks," he said. "Same as I noted when Mr. Drummond first brought me out to look at him. Concentrated on the flanks and hindquarters, consistent with repeated strikes from a short-handled quirt." Silas held up the whip Tomas had found. "Like this one?" Doc Whitfield took it and examined the braided leather. He held it against one of the scars on the stallion's flank, measuring the width. "Exact match," he said. "The width of the braid, the pattern of the scarring. This is the weapon that was used on this animal." "Can you put that in writing?" Silas asked. "I can and I will. I'll have a sworn statement ready by tomorrow morning." "I need it tonight." Doc Whitfield looked at Silas over his spectacles. "That urgent?" "A man named Virgil Calder showed up today claiming he owns this horse. He's got forged papers and a friendly judge. I need every piece of evidence I can get before he files his claim." "Calder?" Doc Whitfield frowned. "Thin fellow, scar on his face, smokes cheap tobacco." Clara's heart stopped. "You know him?" "He's been in town about 3 weeks. Came in quiet. Been staying at the boarding house on 3rd Street. Drinks at the Lucky Strike most evenings. I treated him for a knife wound on his hand about 10 days ago." 3 weeks, Clara said. The number hit her like a fist. He's been here 3 weeks, and he waited until now to make his move. "He was watching," Silas said, his voice hard. "Watching the ranch. Watching me fail with the horse. Waiting for the right moment." "He was waiting for someone to break the stallion," Clara said, and the realization made her sick. A wild horse isn't worth stealing. A broken horse is worth a fortune. He let me do the hard work, and now he's come to collect. Silas's jaw clenched so tight, Clara could see the muscles jump. "Doc, I need that statement tonight, whatever it takes." "You'll have it." Doc Whitfield picked up his bag. "And Silas? That man's been buying drinks for Judge Harriman at the Lucky Strike every night for 2 weeks. Half the town knows about it. Whatever claim he files, it won't be a surprise to the judge." After the doctor left, Clara found Silas in the barn. He was standing with his hands braced against a stall door, his head bowed, breathing hard. She had seen that posture before, on her father, the night he realized Calder had stolen everything. "Don't," Clara said. Silas did not look up. "Don't what?" "Don't go to that dark place. I've been there. There's nothing useful in it." "He's been here 3 weeks, Clara. 3 weeks on my doorstep, and I didn't know. He could have poisoned the water, could have burned the barn, could have done anything." "But he didn't, because Virgil Calder doesn't destroy things with fire. He destroys them with paper. He's a con man, not an arsonist. His weapon is patience and forgery and the kind of charm that makes judges and bankers look the other way. Silas finally lifted his head. Then how do we beat him? We do what my father couldn't do. We get ahead of him. Clara pulled a stool over and sat down. Her mind was racing, pulling together everything she knew about Virgil Calder, every trick he had used, every pattern she had watched play out on her father's ranch. Calder's con works because he isolates his target, Clara said. He picks a man who's alone, who doesn't have powerful friends, who won't fight back hard enough. My father was a horseman, not a businessman. He didn't know how to navigate the legal system. By the time he figured out what Calder had done, it was too late. I'm not alone, Silas said. No, you're not, and that's what we use against him. Clara leaned forward. Calder expects you to do what my father did. Hire a local lawyer, file a counterclaim, and get dragged into a legal fight that bleeds you dry while his friendly judge delays and delays until you give up or go broke. So we don't play his game. We don't play his game. Your lawyer in Helena, Creighton, is he good? Best in the territory.
Can he get a territorial judge involved? Someone above Harriman?
If we can show cause, corruption, conflict of interest. Calder's been buying Harriman drinks for 2 weeks, Doc Whitfield just told us. That's not proof of corruption, but it's enough to raise questions. And if Creighton can get a territorial judge to review the case instead of Harriman, then Calder's fake papers fall apart under real scrutiny. Silas straightened up. Something was shifting in his face. The despair was burning off like morning fog, replaced by something harder, something focused. What else? The broker in Kentucky, the one you bought the stallion from. Do you still have his information? Everything. Bill of sale, correspondence, shipping records. Calder claims the broker sold you stolen property, but the broker has records too. If we can get the broker to testify that Calder was hired as a handler, not an owner, that destroys his claim. I'll wire the broker tonight.
And the whip, Clara stood up. The whip is the key to everything. Doc Whitfield can match it to the scars. If we can prove Calder abused the horse, we can prove he was the handler. And if he was the handler, he had no ownership rights. His bill of sale is a forgery. Silas looked at her with an expression that made Clara's breath hitch. It was not just admiration. It was something deeper. Something that said he was seeing her. Truly seeing her. And what he saw amazed him. Your father taught you horses, Silas said. Who taught you this? Watching Virgil Calder destroy my father taught me this. I spent 3 years going over every step of that con, every document, every lie. I swore that if I ever got the chance to face him again, I would know his playbook better than he does. And now you have that chance. Now we have that chance. The telegram to Samuel Creighton went out that evening. Tomas wrote it into town personally, and Clara wrote the message herself, laying out every fact in clear, precise language. The forged bill of sale, Calder's history in Wyoming, the whip, the scars, Doc Whitfield's testimony, the judge's compromised relationship with Calder. When Tomas returned, he brought news. Calder filed his claim with Judge Harriman this afternoon, the foreman said, standing in the kitchen with his hat in his hands. Hearing set for Friday, 3 days from now. 3 days. Clara closed her eyes. 3 days to build a case that had taken her father 6 months to lose. There's more, Tomas said. His voice was strange. Careful. I asked around town about Calder. Talked to some folks at the Lucky Strike. And? Silas asked. He's been telling people he's Clara's uncle. The silence in the kitchen was absolute. He said, what? Clara's voice was barely a whisper. Told folks he's your father's brother. Said you're a troubled girl who ran away from family. Said he's been looking for you for years, and he's worried about your state of mind. Tomas would not meet Clara's eyes. Some folks in town believe him, miss. He's a convincing talker. Clara's hands were shaking, not with fear, with a rage so deep it felt bottomless. He's trying to discredit me, Clara said. If people think I'm unstable, my testimony about what he did to my father means nothing. That's exactly what he's doing, Silas said. His voice was controlled, but Clara could hear the fury underneath. He's attacking you because you're the biggest threat to his con. He's right to be afraid of me, Clara said, and she meant it with every fiber of her being. But spreading lies about me in town is one thing. Saying it under oath is another. And if he claims to be my father's brother on a witness stand, I can prove he's lying. My father was an only child. I have the family Bible with the birth records. It's in my satchel upstairs. Tomas and Silas both stared at her. You carry your family Bible with you? Tomas asked. It's all I have left of them. It goes where I go. Silas crossed the kitchen and stopped in front of Clara. He took both her hands in his. His grip was warm and solid, and Clara held on, because right now, in this moment, she needed something to hold on to. We're going to beat him, Silas said. You hear me? We are going to beat this man. You don't know him, Silas. You don't know how good he is at this. I don't need to know him. I know you, and you are smarter, tougher, and more stubborn than any con man who ever drew breath in Montana. Clara almost laughed. Almost. You've known me 4 days. Best 4 days of my life. He said it plain, without decoration, the way a man states a fact he is certain of. The way a man says the sun rises in the east. Clara looked down at their joined hands. His were rough and brown from sun and work. Hers were smaller, calloused in different places. The hands of a woman who had gentled horses and scrubbed floors, and carried other people's packages for a living. Silas, when this is over, you and I are going to have a conversation about your future. But right now, we've got a fight to win. He let go of her hands and turned to Tomas. Double the night watch on the corral. I want 2 men on that fence from sundown to sunup. And nobody goes near that horse except Clara. Done, Tomas said. And Tomas, spread the word in town, quietly. Tell people who Virgil Calder really is. What he did in Wyoming. Don't argue with anyone. Just plant the seeds. Tomas put his hat on and nodded. I know a few people who'll listen. Nell Cooper at the boarding house. She's been suspicious of Calder since he showed up. Nell Cooper? Clara asked. Runs the boarding house where Calder's staying. Sharp woman. Doesn't miss much. Talk to her first, Clara said. If Calder's been staying at her place for 3 weeks, she might know things. Habits, visitors, anything that doesn't add up. Tomas left. The kitchen was quiet. Clara sat at the table and pressed her palms flat against the wood to stop them from trembling. Bess set a cup of coffee in front of her without being asked. That man, Bess said quietly, the one who came to the corral today, he's the one who killed your father. Clara looked up. My father died of, I don't care what the doctor wrote on the paper, child. A man who steals another man's life work kills him just as sure as a bullet. And now that snake is here trying to do the same thing to Silas. Not if I can help it. Bess put her hand on Clary's shoulder and squeezed. I've known Silas Drummond since he was a boy working cattle drives. He's been alone too long, carrying too much by himself. And then you showed up. Bess, I'm not finished. You showed up, and in 4 days, you've done something I haven't been able to do in 3 years. You've made that man want to fight for something again. Not just the ranch, not just the horse. Something. Clara's throat tightened. I'm just here to break a horse. Honey, you're here to break a whole lot more than a horse, and I think you know it. Clara did not answer because she did not trust her voice. That night, she could not sleep. She lay in the narrow bed and stared at the ceiling and listened to the quiet sounds of the ranch and the murmur of voices from the men Silas had posted at the corral. At midnight, she heard footsteps on the porch below her window. She got up and looked out. Silas was standing in the yard, looking toward the corral. His rifle was in his hands. Clara pulled on her boots and went downstairs. You should be sleeping, she said from the porch. So should you. I can't. Neither can I. She walked down the steps and stood beside him. The night was warm, and the stars were thick overhead, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. I keep thinking about what Bess said, Clara told him. About you carrying too much alone. Bess talks too much. Everyone on this ranch talks too much, except you. You don't talk enough. Silas was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Margaret used to say the same thing. She said I bottled everything up, and one day I'd explode. Did you? After she died, I didn't talk to anyone for 2 months. Tomas ran the ranch. Bess left food outside my door. I just sat in that house and tried to figure out how to breathe without her. Clara's heart ached for him. And then? And then one morning I woke up, and I heard the horses in the corral, and I thought, they need me. They don't care that I'm broken. They just need to be fed. So I got up and I fed the horses, and then I fed the cattle, and I fixed a fence, and I just kept moving. One task at a time, one day at a time. That's surviving, Clara said softly. That's not living. Silas turned to look at her. I know the difference now. Because of the horse? Because of you. The words hung in the dark air between them. Clara felt them land in her chest like stones in still water, sending ripples out in every direction. Silas, I'm scared. Of Calder? Of everything. Of Calder, of losing again, of what happens if we win and I have to figure out what my life looks like without running. She paused. Of you. Of me? Of how I feel about you. It's been 4 days. 4 days is nothing. 4 days is crazy. 4 days is how long it took you to break a horse nobody else could touch, Silas said. You telling me 4 days isn't long enough to know something real when it's standing in front of you? Clara closed her eyes. When she opened them, Silas had moved closer. Close enough that she could feel the warmth coming off his body. After Friday, Clara said. After we beat Calder. After the horse is safe, and the ranch is safe, and this mess is over. Then we talk about this. About us. After Friday, Silas agreed. Promise me. I promise. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered on her cheek for just a moment. But Clara, just so we're clear, I already know. Know what? What I want. I've known since the morning you sat down in the dirt with that stallion and showed me what courage looks like. Clara's hand came up and covered his. She held it against her face for 3 heartbeats, feeling his calluses against her skin, feeling the warmth and the steadiness of him. Then she let go and stepped back. Friday, she said. Friday. She went inside. She climbed the stairs. She pressed her back against the door of her room and breathed until her heart slowed down. Then she pulled out her father's Bible from the satchel, opened it to the family records page, and began to prepare for war. The reply from Samuel Creighton arrived the next morning by telegram. Clara and Silas read it together at the kitchen table.
Have contacted Territorial Judge Wallace in Helena. Stop. Harriman already under investigation for corruption. Stop. Wallace will ride to Miles City to preside over hearing. Stop. Arriving Thursday. Stop. Bring all evidence. Stop. Creighton. Clara read it twice. Then she put the telegram down and looked at Silas. Harriman is already under investigation, she said, which means Calder picked the wrong judge to buy drinks for. Or the right one, the only judge desperate enough to be bought. Silas leaned back in his chair. Creighton's good. If he says Wallace is coming, Wallace is coming. And Wallace is straight. He won't be swayed by Calder's paper. We need more than the whip and the doctor's statement, Clara said. We need the broker's testimony. Did you hear back? Wire went to Kentucky yesterday. No reply yet. Clara's stomach nodded. Without the broker confirming that Calder was hired as a handler, their case rested on the whip, the scars, and Clara's word. And Calder was already poisoning her credibility in town. I need to talk to Nell Cooper, Clara said. The boarding house woman? Why? Because Calder has been living under her roof for 3 weeks. If there's anything that proves who he really is, letters, documents, anything, it's in his room. Clara, you can't break into a man's room. I'm not going to break in. I'm going to ask Nell Cooper to let me in. Tomas said she's suspicious of Calder already. If she knows what he did to my father, what he did to your horse, she might help. Silas studied her face. You're sure about this? I'm sure that Virgil Calder has been running the same con for years, and he always keeps his tools close. Somewhere in that room, there's a forgery kit. Ink, blank paper, official seals. My father's lawyer said Calder probably carried one, but we could never prove it. If we find it, it's over, Silas said. A forgery kit proves the bill of sale is fake. If we find it. Clara rode into Miles City that afternoon on a horse Silas lent her. It felt strange to be in a saddle again after so long, but her body remembered, even if her mind had tried to forget. The horse was a steady bay mare, nothing like the stallion, but the rhythm of riding settled something inside Clara that had been jangled loose by Calder's appearance. Nell Cooper's boarding house was a 2-story clapboard building near the center of town. Clara tied the mare to the hitching post and walked through the front door into a clean, spare parlor that smelled of lye soap and beeswax. Mel herself was behind the front desk. She was perhaps 50, with iron gray hair pulled back in a severe bun and sharp brown eyes that took in Clara from boots to bonnet in a single glance. You're the horsewoman, Nell said, not a question. Clara Jennings, ma'am. I know who you are. Tomas was here this morning. Told me quite a story. Every word of it is true. I believe it. Nell came around the desk. That man has been staying in my house for 3 weeks, and I've had a bad feeling about him since day one. Pays in cash, keeps odd hours, and he watches people. The way a cat watches a mouse hole. Mrs. Cooper, I need to see his room. Nell's eyes narrowed. That's a big ask, Miss Jennings. I know, and I wouldn't ask if lives didn't depend on it. Calder destroyed my father. He tortured a horse for 3 weeks in a locked boxcar. And now he's trying to steal that horse and ruin the man who owns him. If there's evidence in his room that proves he's a forger, it could stop him. Nell was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a key. Room 6, top of the stairs, end of the hall. He left for the Lucky Strike 20 minutes ago. He usually doesn't come back before 9. Clara took the key. Her hand was trembling. Miss Jennings, Nell caught her arm. If he catches you in that room, I can't protect you. I know, ma'am. Then be quick. Clara went up the stairs. Her heart was pounding so loud, she was sure the whole building could hear it. She found room 6 and turned the key in the lock and pushed the door open. The room was spare.
A bed, a chair, a washstand, a saddlebag thrown across the chair. Clara went to the saddlebag and opened it with shaking hands. Clothes, a flask, a pouch of cheap tobacco. She dug deeper. Her fingers found something hard wrapped in cloth. She pulled it out and unwrapped it. A leather roll. Inside, 3 bottles of ink in different colors, a set of steel nib pens, blank sheets of paper with official-looking watermarks, and a rubber stamp that read, Commonwealth of Kentucky, Office of the Clerk. Clara's breath left her body. This was it. The forgery kit. The same tools Virgil Calder had used to steal her father's ranch.
The same tools he had used to create a fake bill of sale for Silas's stallion. She wrapped the kit back up and shoved it inside her coat. Then she searched the rest of the saddlebag and found one more thing. A letter, addressed to Calder, from the broker in Kentucky. She read it standing in the middle of Virgil Calder's room, with her blood roaring in her ears. Mr. Calder, this confirms your employment as handler for the stallion being shipped to Mr. S. Drummond in Miles City, Montana Territory. Your fee of $40 has been paid in advance. Please ensure the animal arrives in good health. Regards, J. Whitaker, Whitaker Livestock Brokerage, Lexington, Kentucky. Clara's hand shook so badly she could barely fold the letter. Here it was, in Calder's own saddlebag. Proof that he was the handler, not the owner. Proof that his bill of sale was a lie. She put the letter inside her coat with the forgery kit and walked out of the room. She locked the door behind her. She went down the stairs on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. Nell Cooper was waiting at the bottom. "Did you find what you needed?" Nell asked. Clara looked at the older woman and felt tears sting her eyes. "Mrs. Cooper, you just saved a man's ranch and a horse's life." Nell's severe face softened. "Then it was worth the risk. Now get out of here before that snake comes back." Clara rode back to the ranch faster than she had ever ridden in her life. She burst into the kitchen where Silas and Tomas were bent over a map of the ranch's boundary lines, planning extra security. She put the forgery kit and the letter on the table between them. "It's over," Clara said. "We've got him." Silas picked up the letter, read it again. Then he looked at Clara, and the expression on his face was something she would remember for the rest of her life. Relief and fury and pride and something else. Something that burned in those blue eyes like a signal fire on a dark night. "Friday," Silas said. "Friday," Clara answered. And for the first time since Virgil Calder had walked back into her life, Clara Jennings smiled. Friday came with a kind of heat that made the air shimmer above the dirt roads of Miles City. Clara was dressed in the cleanest clothes she owned, her hair pinned back, her father's Bible tucked under one arm, and Virgil Calder's forgery kit and letter, wrapped in cloth, inside a leather bag Silas had given her. She had not slept. She had spent the night at the kitchen table going over every piece of evidence, every argument, every possible lie Calder might tell, and how to destroy it. Silas had sat with her until 2 a.m. Then Bess had taken over, keeping the coffee coming and the fire stoked. "You're ready," Bess said as Clara stood to leave. "I don't feel ready." "Honey, ready is a feeling for people who haven't been through what you've been through. You're past ready. You're armed." Silas brought the wagon around front. He was wearing a clean white shirt and his best coat, and his jaw was freshly shaved. He looked like a man going to church, except for the hardness in his eyes. Tomas rode alongside on horseback. Behind them, Marcus and 3 other ranch hands followed on their own mounts. Nobody had asked them to come. They had simply saddled up and fallen in line. "You don't have to bring the whole ranch," Clara said as Silas helped her onto the wagon seat. They wanted to come, every one of them. Silas climbed up beside her and took the reins. You changed something on that ranch, Clara. Those men watched you do the impossible, and now they want to stand behind you. Clara looked back at the line of riders behind the wagon. Marcus caught her eye and tipped his hat. His arm was still in a sling from the stallion's kick, and he was riding anyway. Her throat tightened. She turned forward and said nothing, because there was nothing to say that would not come out as tears. The hearing was held in the Miles City Courthouse, a squat building that doubled as the town hall and the occasional dance hall on Saturday nights. By the time Silas's wagon pulled up, the street was already crowded. Word had spread fast. A property dispute involving the territory's richest rancher, a mysterious horsewoman, and a stranger with a scarred face was better entertainment than anything Miles City had seen in months. Clara climbed down from the wagon and saw Virgil Calder standing on the courthouse steps. He was smiling, that same thin, reptile smile she remembered from the day he walked out of her father's ranch house with the deed in his hand and a tip of his hat to the man he had just destroyed. "Morning, Clara," Calder called out. "You look well. Better than the last time I saw you." Clara walked past him without a word. Silas fell in beside her, his hand light on the small of her back. Not possessive, protective. "Don't let him rattle you," Silas murmured. "He can't rattle me. I buried my father because of him. There's nothing left to rattle." Inside the courthouse, the room was already full. Clara scanned the faces and felt her stomach drop when she saw Judge Harriman sitting behind the bench. He was a heavy man with small eyes and a red face, and he looked at Calder the way a dog looks at the hand that feeds it. But beside Harriman sat another man. Tall, thin, silver-haired, with a kind of face that looked like it had been carved from granite and never learned to smile. He wore a black coat and a territorial judge's pin on his lapel. Judge Wallace. Creighton had delivered. Calder saw Wallace at the same moment Clara did. His smile flickered. Just for a second. Just enough for Clara to see. He didn't expect this, she thought. Good. Samuel Creighton was already at the front table. He was younger than Clara had expected, maybe 30, with sharp features and sharper eyes. He stood when Silas and Clara approached and shook both their hands. "I've reviewed everything," Creighton said quietly. "The letter, the forgery kit, Doc Whitfield's statement. We have a strong case. But Clara, Calder's lawyer is going to come after you personally. He's going to try to make this about your credibility, not his client's crimes." "I know," Clara said. "I'm ready." "He's going to bring up your father's mental state, the failed ranch, the fact that you've been drifting for 3 years. He's going to paint you as unstable and unreliable. Let him try." Creighton studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Good. Don't get angry on the stand. Anger makes you look emotional. Stay calm, state facts, and let the evidence do the work." "Mr. Creighton, I've been waiting 3 years for this moment. I'm not going to waste it on anger." Judge Wallace called the hearing to order. Harriman sat beside him, looking like a man who had swallowed something sour. Wallace's presence meant oversight, and oversight meant Harriman could not simply rule in Calder's favor without consequences. Calder's lawyer was a man named Phelps from Billings. He was smooth and well-dressed, and he spoke with the careful precision of someone who charged by the word. He laid out Calder's claim in simple terms. His client was the rightful owner of the Black Stallion. The broker had sold the horse without authorization. Calder had a bill of sale proving ownership. He was merely seeking the return of his property. "Mr. Calder," Phelps said, calling his client to the witness chair, "tell the court how you came to own this horse."
Calder settled into the chair like he belonged there. I purchased the stallion from a farm outside Lexington in the spring of this year. Paid cash. Got a proper bill of sale. And how did the horse end up in Mr. Drummond's possession? I hired a broker named Whitaker to transport the animal to Montana. I was going to meet him here, but Whitaker double-crossed me, sold the horse to Drummond behind my back, and pocketed the money. So the horse was stolen from you? That's right. And you have documentation proving your ownership? I do. Calder held up the folded paper he had shown at the ranch. Phelps entered it into evidence. Clara watched and waited. Her hands were folded in her lap, her back straight, her face calm. Inside, her blood was boiling. Creighton stood for cross-examination. Mr. Calder, you say you purchased this horse from a farm outside Lexington. Can you name the farm? Greenfield Stables. And the owner? A man named Patterson. Robert Patterson? That's the one. Creighton picked up a piece of paper from his table. I received a telegram from Robert Patterson of Greenfield Stables yesterday afternoon. He states that he sold the stallion to the Whitaker Livestock Brokerage in March of this year. He has never met you, Mr. Calder. He has never done business with you. And he has never issued you a bill of sale for any animal. The courtroom buzzed. Calder's smile thinned but held. Patterson's lying, Calder said. Or he doesn't remember. It was months ago. Mr. Patterson keeps meticulous records. He provided copies of his sales ledger. Your name does not appear anywhere in his books. Objection, Phelps said. Telegrams are not sworn testimony. Sustained for now, Judge Wallace said. But Mr. Creighton, you may continue your line of questioning. Creighton nodded. Mr. Calder, let me ask you something different. Have you ever been employed by the Whitaker Livestock Brokerage? Calder's jaw tightened. No. You've never worked for Mr. Whitaker in any capacity? Never. You've never been hired as a livestock handler to accompany animals during transport? I said never. Creighton turned to his table and picked up the letter Clara had found in Calder's room. Your Honor, I'd like to enter this into evidence. It is a letter from J. Whitaker of the Whitaker Livestock Brokerage, addressed to Virgil Calder, confirming his employment as a handler for the stallion being shipped to Mr. Drummond. It was found in Mr. Calder's personal belongings. The courtroom erupted. Harriman banged his gavel. Wallace simply waited, his granite face impassive. Phelps was on his feet. How was this letter obtained? If it was stolen from my client's private, the letter was turned over voluntarily by Mrs. Nell Cooper, proprietor of the boarding house where Mr. Calder is staying, after she became concerned about her tenant's activities. Creighton handed the letter to Judge Wallace. Mrs. Cooper is present in the courtroom and prepared to testify. Clara glanced over her shoulder. Nell Cooper was sitting in the second row, her iron-gray hair pulled back tight, her sharp eyes fixed on Calder. She gave Clara the smallest nod. Wallace read the letter carefully. Then he looked at Calder. Mr. Calder, this letter clearly states that you were hired as a handler, not as the owner of the horse in question. Would you like to explain the discrepancy between this document and your testimony? Calder's face had gone pale beneath his tan. The scar on his cheek stood out like a white slash. That letter is a forgery, he said. A forgery, Wallace repeated. Interesting choice of words, Mr. Calder. Creighton picked up the cloth-wrapped bundle. Your Honor, I have one more piece of evidence. This is a leather roll containing 3 bottles of ink, steel nib pens, blank paper with official watermarks, and a rubber stamp bearing the seal of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, Office of the Clerk. This was also found among Mr. Calder's belongings at the boarding house. He unwrapped it and set it on the table. The courtroom went dead silent. This, Your Honor, is a forgery kit.
the tools necessary to create fraudulent legal documents, including bills of sale. Calder was on his feet. "That's not mine. Someone planted that in my room." "Sit down, Mr. Calder," Wallace said, and his voice could have frozen the Yellowstone River. "You will have your chance to respond." "Your Honor, I'm being set up. That woman—" Calder pointed at Clara. "She broke into my room. She's been after me for years, ever since her father's ranch failed. She's unstable. She's vindictive." "I said, sit down." Calder sat, but his eyes found Clara across the courtroom, and the hatred in them was pure and cold and bottomless. Clara held his gaze. She did not flinch. She did not look away. 3 years. 3 years of grief and poverty and anger and loss. 3 years of watching her father waste away, of working jobs that crushed her spirit, of carrying the weight of everything Virgil Calder had stolen. She held his gaze, and she did not blink. "Mr. Creighton," Wallace said, "do you have additional witnesses?" "I do, Your Honor. I'd like to call Dr. James Whitfield." Doc Whitfield took the stand and laid out his findings in precise, clinical language. The stallion's injuries, the pattern of whip marks, the match between the scars and the quirt found at the Drummond Ranch. His conclusion that the horse had been systematically beaten over a period of weeks. "In your professional opinion, Doctor," Creighton asked, "could these injuries have been self-inflicted during transport, as the broker initially suggested?" "Absolutely not. These marks are consistent with deliberate, repeated strikes from a short-handled whip. The pattern indicates a right-handed attacker standing at the animal's left flank. This horse was beaten by a human being, methodically and over time." "And the whip recovered at the Drummond Ranch is consistent with the injuries?" "It is an exact match." Clara watched the jury of townspeople absorbing this. She watched their faces shift from curiosity to anger. These were ranch people. They understood horses. They understood what it meant to beat a confined, terrified animal. Creighton called Clara next. She walked to the witness chair on legs that felt steadier than she expected. She sat down and faced the courtroom and found Silas's eyes in the front row. "Forge a document, find a sympathetic judge, and steal what doesn't belong to you." The only difference is, this time he added animal cruelty to his crimes. "Objection," Phelps shouted. "The witness is making accusations without—" "The evidence supports every word she's said," Creighton cut in. "We have the forgery kit, the broker's letter, the doctor's testimony, and Mr. Calder's own lies under oath. He told this court he never worked for Whitaker. The letter in his own saddlebag proves otherwise." Wallace held up his hand. "I've heard enough." The courtroom held its breath. Wallace looked at Calder for a long time. Then he looked at Harriman, who had gone the color of old milk. "It is the finding of this court that the bill of sale presented by Virgil Calder is fraudulent. The evidence clearly establishes that Mr. Calder was employed as a handler, not an owner, and that his claim to the stallion is without merit." Clara's hands gripped the arms of the witness chair. "Furthermore," Wallace continued, "the evidence of animal cruelty, the forgery kit, and Mr. Calder's perjury before this court constitute serious criminal offenses. I am ordering Mr. Calder held in custody pending a full criminal trial." "You can't do this!" Calder lunged to his feet. "That woman set me up. She—" "Sheriff," Wallace said calmly, "remove Mr. Calder from my courtroom." 2 deputies stepped forward. Calder struggled. He cursed. He shouted Clara's name like a weapon, hurling accusations that bounced off the walls. Clara watched them drag him out. She watched the courthouse doors close behind him. And she felt something inside her chest release. Something that had been wound tight as a watch spring for 3 years. And it came loose all at once,
and she had to grip the chair to keep from sliding to the floor. Wallace turned to Harriman. "Judge Harriman, your relationship with the defendant will be reviewed by the Territorial Commission."
"I suggest you make yourself available for questions." Harriman said nothing. He looked like a man watching his own funeral. Wallace banged his gavel. "This hearing is concluded." The courtroom erupted. People surged to their feet, talking, shouting, pressing forward. Clara stood from the witness chair and stepped down, and Silas was there. He was right there, and he caught her arms when her knees buckled. "You did it," he said, his voice rough. "Clara, you did it." "We did it," she managed. "No," he shook his head. "That was you. Every bit of that was you." Tomas appeared beside them, his weathered face split in a grin Clara had never seen before. "Miss Jennings, I believe this calls for a celebration." "I believe it calls for a nap," Clara said, and she laughed. And the laugh turned into something that was half sob and half joy. And she pressed her face against Silas's chest and let it come. He held her. Right there in the Miles City Courthouse, in front of the whole town, Silas Drummond wrapped his arms around Clara Jennings and held her while she shook. Nell Cooper found them outside. She pressed Clara's hand between both of hers. "Your father would be proud," Nell said. "Wherever he is, he's proud." "Thank you, Mrs. Cooper, for the key, for everything." "You're welcome, child. And you call me Nell. I reckon we're past formalities." The ride back to the ranch was quiet. Clara sat beside Silas on the wagon seat, and somewhere around the halfway mark, her hand found his on the bench between them. His fingers closed around hers, and neither of them spoke. They did not need to. At the ranch, the stallion was waiting at the corral fence. He nickered when he saw Clara, a soft, low sound that went straight through her. Clara climbed down from the wagon and went to him. She put her hands on his face, on either side of that white star, and pressed her forehead against his. "He's never going to hurt you again," she whispered. "It's over. You're safe." The stallion blew warm air against her neck and leaned into her touch. Silas was standing behind her. She could feel him there, solid and patient and waiting. The way he had waited all week. The way she suspected he would wait as long as she needed. She turned around. "You said after Friday," Clara said. "I did." "It's Friday." "It is." "You said you already knew what you wanted." Silas stepped closer. "I do." "Then say it." He took her face in his hands. His palms were rough and warm, and they trembled against her skin. "Stay," he said. "Stay here. Not as a hired hand, not as a horsebreaker. Stay as my partner. Stay and build this ranch with me. Stay and let me love you the way you deserve to be loved." "You've known me 5 days, Silas Drummond." "I've known you my whole life. I just didn't meet you until Monday." Clara laughed. It was a wet, broken, beautiful laugh. "That's either the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me, or the craziest. Can't it be both?" She put her hands over his. "My father used to say, you can tell everything about a man by the way he treats his horse. And you spent a fortune on an animal everyone said should be destroyed because you believed something in him was worth saving. That tells me everything I need to know about you." Silas leaned down and kissed her. Soft at first, careful, like a question he was afraid to ask. Clara answered it by pulling him closer, her fingers gripping the front of his shirt, and the kiss deepened into something fierce and certain and unbreakable. When they pulled apart, Clara heard cheering. She turned to find Tomas, Marcus, Bess, and every hand on the ranch standing in the yard, grinning and clapping and whistling. "Oh, for heaven's sake," Clara muttered.
but she was smiling so hard, her face ached. "About time!" Bess hollered from the porch. "I was fixin' to lock you two in the barn if you didn't sort this out today." Silas kept his arm around Clara's waist and faced his people. "All right, show's over. Back to work. All of you." Nobody moved. They just kept grinning. "I said back to work." Tomas tipped his hat. "Yes, boss. Right away, boss. Just as soon as you stop smiling like a fool, boss." Silas was, in fact, smiling like a fool. Clara had never seen anything so beautiful in her life. That evening, they sat on the porch. Their porch. Clara was already starting to think of it that way. And the word "there" felt like sunlight after a long, cold winter. "I need to send a telegram to Helena," Clara said. "The schoolmistress is expecting me." "Tell her you found a better position." "What position is that exactly?" Silas looked at her. "Horse trainer? Ranch partner? Future wife, if you'll have me. Though I reckon I should court you properly before I ask that last one." "You've got time," Clara said. "I'm not going anywhere." "No," Silas said, pulling her close. "You're not." They were married in the Miles City Church 3 months later. Tomas gave Clara away. Bess cried through the entire ceremony. Mel Cooper sat in the front row and dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief she swore she had brought for allergies. The stallion, whom Clara had named Midnight for his coal-black coat, stood saddled and bridled outside the church, wearing a garland of wildflowers that Bess had woven into his mane. When Clara and Silas emerged as husband and wife, Midnight nickered and bumped Clara's shoulder with his nose, and the whole town laughed. Virgil Calder was convicted of forgery, perjury, and animal cruelty 4 months after the hearing. He was sentenced to 7 years in the territorial prison. Clara sat in the courtroom for the sentencing, and when the judge read the verdict, she did not feel triumph. She felt something quieter. Something like a door closing on a room she never had to enter again. She rode home to the ranch that afternoon and went straight to her father's grave marker, a simple wooden cross she and Silas had placed on the hill above the river. She knelt in the grass and put her hand on the warm wood. "We got him, Daddy," she said. "It took 3 years, but we got him." Clara Jennings Drummond built the finest horse breeding program in Montana Territory. Midnight sired foals that sold for prices that made ranches from Texas to California make the long trip north. Clara trained every one of them herself, using the techniques her father had taught her, and she taught those techniques to her children. She and Silas had 4. A boy first, Thomas, named for Clara's father. Then twin girls, Margaret and Eleanor. And finally another boy, James, who came into the world hollering louder than any stallion Clara had ever met. Thomas had his mother's gift with horses. Margaret had her father's head for business. Eleanor became a doctor, the first woman physician in Miles City. And James grew up to be a lawyer who spent his career making sure men like Virgil Calder could never steal another family's land. The ranch prospered. Clara and Silas ran it as true partners, every decision made together, every challenge faced side by side. The town that had once whispered about the crazy woman who thought she could break a killer horse now pointed her out to visitors with pride. That's Clara Drummond. Best horse trainer in the territory, maybe the best in the whole West. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Silas took Clara back to the corral where they had first met. It was evening, and the ranch was quiet, and the corral held a new generation of Midnight's descendants, sleek and strong, and trusting of human hands. "Remember the first thing you ever said to me?" Silas asked. "I said your horse wasn't vicious, and I said, 'Can you break